So in the previous video, I introduced to you what a function is, what it does, and how it's structured. Now it's time to actually incorporate some functions into our monthly expense report. The first function I'm going to be showing you is the sum function. Now the sum function is one of the most popular functions inside of Excel, and it's used worldwide. So to start off, unfortunately, we're going to be deleting all the cells that we have formulas in there that sum up the values per month or per expense. So I'm selecting cells and clicking the delete key on my keyboard, and you can tell that our formulas over here in the percent of total column are giving us an error because there isn't any data in the total column. Alright, so the first column that we're going to be using the sum function in is the January column. So we're going to click in cell B9. There's multiple ways to insert a function. I'll show you a few options. Then you can choose the way that you prefer. So the first way is going up to the Formulas tab. And inside the function library, we're going to try to find the sum function. Now sum, that sounds like math and trig. So I'm going to click the math and trig book. Scroll down to the S's. And we can see the sum function right here. I'm just going to give that a click. Now the function arguments window automatically pops up, and what the sum function does, it tells us right here, is that it adds all the numbers in a range of cells. Excel is pretty smart, and it already gave us a suggestion of what range of cells to add, but let's say it wasn't there. Okay, so in our first argument, number 1, we could click the cost of goods sold, which is B4. And then for number 2, we can click wages. Number 3, rent. But this is kind of going back on what we did previously when we were building the formula. So this is still not the most efficient way. So we can delete all these. And instead of referencing a single cell, we can reference a range. So make sure we click inside number 1. And then we're going to go to our report and select the cells that we want to sum. So I'm going to click in cell B4. And click and drag to B8. Now we can see that the numbers that this function is going to sum are 1,000, 500, 750, 125, and 80, giving us a total of 2,455. We're going to click OK. And if we select our cells again and check our status bar, it looks like that our sum function is working properly. Now you might have noticed this green triangle pop up here in the cell. This is Excel just trying to be helpful, and it thinks that we might have left something out. It's not necessarily an error, but what is happening in this situation is that, remember that date values are actually numeric values in Excel. So our sum function is adding up these cells, and Excel is also looking at the cell above this selection, which is cell B3. Because since this is a numeric value, Excel's like, well, do you want to add B3 to B8? Instead of B4 to B8. For example, if I click this cell and then click the warning symbol and click update this formula to include cells, see, we get this weird number because it's actually adding the date value. So I'm going to click Control Z to undo that, and instead of updating the formula, I'm just going to say ignore error. Now the green triangle is gone. Now from here, we could easily just click in this cell with our function in it and click and drag the fill handle to give us the totals for each column. But like I said, I wanted to show you multiple ways to insert a function, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that on hold for right now. So for the February column, I'm going to click in cell C9, and instead of searching in the function library, I'm going to type in the equal sign, and since I know what function I want to put in, I can just start typing the function name. This little drop box appears that has all the functions that have the word sum included in the name. So I'm going to give this a double click. Now the function argument window doesn't appear automatically doing it this way, but it does give you a little help bar down here showing you what arguments are needed. Now you might see that this argument doesn't have square brackets like this argument. That is because square brackets for arguments are optional, meaning that you don't have to have a number 2 argument. The arguments without the square brackets have to be inserted into the function in order for the function to work properly. And then from here we can just select the cells that we want to sum and make sure we put a closed parentheses and click enter. and it gives us a total of 2320. And once again, that green triangle appeared, but we can ignore it for now. And the last way to search for a function is if you click in the cell. So we're going to be summing the March column and go all the way up to the top in the search bar, and we can search sum, give sum a double click, and once again, Excel's just trying to be helpful of what cells we want to sum. We can overwrite that by selecting cells just to make sure Excel doesn't include a wrong cell. So we're going to be summing D4 through D8. Click OK. And the sum for March is 2420. There is one neat function in Excel, which is called the AutoSum function. And if you could tell up here in our Formulas tab, there's an AutoSum just for itself because the sum function in Excel gets used quite a bit. So if we click in cell E4 to give us a total of all cost of goods sold and click AutoSum, and you can see right down below there is a shortcut to AutoSum, which is Alt plus the equal sign. But for right now, I'm just going to give this a click. And you could tell that Excel knew which cells to automatically sum, which is cell B4 through D4. Click enter. And then once again, I'm going to click AutoSum. Click enter. Now I'm going to do this one more time to show you that AutoSum could potentially not sum the correct cells. So in cell E6, one more time, I'm going to click AutoSum. And instead of going across the columns to sum, it is summing the two figures above it. Now this is because when you usually sum a column, you're putting a sum at the bottom of the column. And in this case, we're putting it to the right. That is why it's searching the cells vertically. So this is definitely something to be aware of. This is not the selection of cells we want, so we can just reselect the cells that we want to sum and click enter. And then for the rest, we can just click in the cell, use the fill handle, and drag down. Now we have the totals for each month and the totals for each expense without having to manually write the formula. Instead, we're using the sum function, which is a lot quicker, more efficient, and it saves us time. And throughout this course, once we start incorporating more and more functions, you'll see how beneficial they actually are.